Welcome to Whistleblowers in partnership with Wix Trade Pro. Coming up.
Gary came to me in a press room at Leicester at Christmas, but I'd written a column about him. Which bit of it didn't you like, Gary? Oh, I've not read it.
What does it say about Newcastle if Isak goes from the northeast to Liverpool?
It shows the message that Newcastle aren't going to be the force that Saudi Arabia owners want it to be.
And Ferguson replied, not in my lifetime. So Alex is still with us. In terms of pounds and pence, City have caught United up and are going past them. I didn't think that would happen.
That's why I said you're like a big baby, you know. They just stared at us and refused to shake my hand even more.
I'm Gordon Smart, joined as ever by the one and only Mark Clattenburg, and he's here as usual, Ian Ladyman.
The small bloke in the corner.
With orange football socks on. Great to see you both. Brilliant to have you here. Mark Clattenburg getting darker and darker as this series goes on. 30 degrees where you are. That's hot in Durham, isn't it?
It certainly is. I wish I was in Durham. No, I'm enjoying my life in Spain, trying to play a bit of golf and still coming on these wonderful podcasts and enjoying the banter with you both.
You look incredibly coordinated. You managed to coordinate the colour of your hair with the colour of your T-shirt, with the colour of your stubble and your glasses. And even your AirPods look quite well. Seriously,
you saw
you've matched your hair with your T-shirt.
His whoop band's colour coordinated as well.
I hate to say it.
Yeah, what I'll have to do is darken this hair, I think, now. No, because it starts bleaching in the sun, you know, so I need to get it a bit darker.
Distinctive look.
You know, we're such good friends now. Mark Clattenburg shared some of his whoop bands with me.
We know. He sent you those.
Have you finally got them?
I got them. I've got to say thank you very much. One thing you should know about Mark Clattenburg, though, he sent them second class post.
Has he invoiced you yet, though? When does the invoice? The invoice will come first class.
Yeah,
it's come off the podcast.
Yeah. That's for sure.
Did I tell that story on the podcast about Alan Hansen? Did I tell that?
Yes, you did.
I did tell that. Okay, let's not retell a story about Alan Hansen being tight.
Indeed.
Right, I've got to pick you up, Mark, on a conversation that we started in the last podcast about Roy Keane, because you said that he refused a handshake. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
All right, so Roy Keane refused a handshake. Yeah, and it was in Qatar. You met him on a jog, didn't you? You were out for a run, totally blanked you, ignored you. And you said it was because you said something mean about him in your autobiography. Is that right?
That's what came out from his side, but I'm not sure, you know.
That was a reason that Keane gave.
Yeah, that was the key. Well, let's refresh your memory, right? Because I've had a little look through the book in my time off over the weekend, and we've dug up every time you mentioned Roy Keane in your book. And for the record, there are 4 mentions of Roy Keane in your book. Mark couldn't remember this last week, so just to remind you, just in case. Did you write it yourself, by the way, or did
Craig
you
Hope
get
did it.
a ghost? Who did it?
Craig Hope, our chief football reporter.
Yeah. Craig did very, very well.
His nickname in the newsroom, No Hope. Bob Hope.
What's the book called? Just to give it a plug.
Well, it's your book, mate.
It's your book, Mark.
Whistleblowers, you see?
Yeah. Whistleblowers.
Podcast.
That's what we're going to call it, right? Okay, so here's the first mention. There are those you have to watch like a hawk, such as Roy Keane at Manchester United. He wanted nothing to do with referees on a personal level. He was not one for a quick chat in the tunnel before the game. That was all part of his hard man exterior. He wanted to intimidate everyone. So do you think that's the reason he was upset? That's pretty mild, isn't it, Ian?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty mild, Mark?
Yeah, I would say it's mild.
Okay.
No, I think he was an intimidating figure. You know, he certainly was, the way he looked, the way he acted, you know, to referees. He was like that stare. He was trying to be the hard man all the time. So, yeah, that's a fair shout. Any
other players who did that in the Premier League to you?
No, I think he was certainly the one up there. But players have changed so much now. It's like you don't see many hard men nowadays. I think Robbie Savage ran around and tried to be a hard man for a while, but he wasn't successful, you know.
Yeah, with his Pantene Pro V.
Yeah.
Right, B, this is the second one. On the pitch, you never knew what Roy Keane was going to do next. And that unnerves you. If you missed a nasty challenge and he'd hurt someone, you would get the blame, not him. He was not enjoyable to referee. Now, Ian, that's kind of up a couple of notches on the criticism scale, isn't it?
I can't see that feeding its way back to Roy Keane.
Right.
I don't think I can't see one of Roy Keane's mates putting that in front of his nose. Yeah, one.
Did you write that, Mark, or was that Mr. Hope?
That was Mr. Hope. I can blame him. But it was true, wasn't it? Because if you look at what he did to Haaland, for example, that just came out of the blue, you know, and David Ellery was lucky who was the referee. He actually missed it, and he was got out of jail card with his assistant referee who spotted it. But imagine that didn't go. You know, the referee didn't punish that. The referee would be talked about for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Now, here's the one that I think could be up for a little bit of debate, right? I spent quite a bit of time with Roy Keane during the 2018 World Cup in Russia. He was also working for ITV, and I loved his company over dinner or in the bar. Not that he ever had a drink. It was fascinating to listen to the stories from his playing career and his time as manager of Sunderland. I was just a football fan lapping it all up. It was proof that these characters can be very different away from a competitive environment where they are so driven to win. And Roy is perhaps the best example of that. Now, that kind of goes against the grain of what you were saying last week, Mark, wasn't it? It sounds like he's your best pal.
I'm going up and down, you see, but that was one chance in Russia to spend some time. There was Roy Keane, there was Martin O'Neill, and these were, for me, fascinating characters to listen to their stories. We've all got stories, but people, you don't really hear them. So it was nice to hear, his time at Sunderland, and because Sunderland's quite a close city to myself. So therefore, it was fascinating to listen to. So yeah, that part of it, I really enjoyed.
Ian, he's all over the place here in the book, isn't he?
Well, number 4 is going to have to be a real gut punch, because all we're doing at the moment is disappearing further up Roy's backside. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why I didn't.
Do you think that's why he
hand.
wouldn't shake me hand?
Yeah,
Do you think somebody set him up? Do you think somebody set him up? Or you think
come on, this is
somebody
it.
else?
I feel like doing a drum roll for number 4.
Here you go, right? Number 4. Even my ITV colleague Roy Keane was nice to me, and that was a first. I felt on top of the world. So is the issue here that you were really actually kissing his backside?
Probably. And he didn't take the bait.
So those are the references to Roy Keane in the book. Yeah. So you know what's happened? This is what happens, you see. Roy Keane won't have read your book, if indeed anyone has. Roy Keane won't have read your book, right? But somebody busy around Roy Keane, one of his mates or whoever represents him these days or whatever, will have seen something in that book that have exaggerated it in their own mind about 10 times and then told Roy Keane. So Roy probably thinks there's something in your book that clearly isn't even in your book. But this is the way it works in football a lot. When people come at journalists, which occasionally happens, and you never mind it if you have written something that's quite out there, or if you've written a news story that's proven to be wrong. That's fine if somebody comes at you. But what they'll often do is come at you, and then you say, here's an example, right? Not particularly want to call out Gary Neville, but I am kind of. Gary came to me in a press room at Leicester at Christmas. We happened to be covering the same game, and he came to me about I'd written a column about him, which he didn't like, and I quite appreciated the fact if he didn't like it, he came and sought me out, and we had what I would call a robust exchange of views about it. It wasn't an argument, wasn't a shouting match, but it was a robust exchange of views. He made a couple of points that were fair, but the one thing that I did manage to put back on him was, well, which bit of it didn't you like, Gary? Oh, I've not read it. Somebody just showed it me. Somebody just showed me the headline. I've not read it. And to be fair, I went home and read it again, and then was quite glad that I was actually quite glad that he hadn't read it. But that's the point. I'm labelling it. But quite often in football, people have a go at you about stuff, and it'll be because someone said, "Oh, guess what Mark Clattenburg said about you," rather than having read that book.
It's very playgroundish, isn't it?
I think you're on pretty safe ground here, Mark.
Yeah, listen, I don't mind, what's said. Gary comes up to you, Roy came up to me and said, Mark, I didn't like what exactly you've said. And then we can have that discussion. But to try and blank us and belittle us in front of, Ian Wright and Gary Neville was a bit embarrassing, I thought. That's why I said you're like a big baby,
Yeah. There's a great northern bit of terminology used there, and it is busy. And Gary Neville was often described as busy, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Just permanently busy.
There's usually another word after that. Busy.
Another great northern word I love as well is mithering. You don't really hear that very much.
Mithering. Yeah, just stop mithering me. No. So did Roy Keane, did you call Keane a baby to his face when he didn't shake your hand?
Yeah.
How did that go?
Big baby.
How did that
go? He just stared at us and refused to shake my hand even more. But the thing is now, I wouldn't even shake Gary Neville's hand. Because for me, like what he did, during my time at Forest, Nottingham Forest was just bordering on, bullying, And I spoke to him on the phone, and he was so, really nasty, and it was like everything I was doing. He said, "You should leave your job. You should be doing this. You should be doing that." And like, Gary, I haven't been a referee for 7 years. Why can I not have another job? And he wasn't having any of it.
Let me tell you something that will grind Gary Neville's gears is the argument about Man City now being bigger than Manchester United. And it has been pretty close from a point of view of commercial revenue for a while now. But the new kit deal, Ian, £1 billion, so 100 million over 10 years with Puma. That felt like one of those moments in football. I don't know if you agree, boys, but it was kind of a landmark. I remember when Shearer signed for 15 million quid thinking, that's just ridiculous money. But 100 million a year is a lot of money.
That is as a Premier League record for kit deal, $1 billion over 10 seasons for Manchester City with Puma. We can sit here if we had an hour to spare and talk about 115 Man City charges with the Premier League that are yet to be resolved, etc. But I don't think we want to delve into that today. We don't know the outcome of that yet, although we sense it may go City's way. What is, I think, interesting in football is that when Abu Dhabi bought City in 2008, and they were very bullish at the time. They probably said some things that they soon regretted about who they were going to buy and what they were going to do. They were very mouthy for a while after that takeover.
The noisy neighbours.
But one of the things that they were not shy of was telling everybody where they wanted to go and what they wanted to become, which was the biggest team in the Premier League and probably in Europe and probably in the world. And I remember being at an Alex Ferguson press conference not long after that when it was put to him. The notion that City would one day eclipse United on the back of all their money, and Ferguson replied, "Not in my lifetime." Well, Sir Alex happily is still with us, and there is a growing argument, or at least a debate to be had about where those two football clubs now sit in terms of what they're doing on the field and what they're doing off the field. I must admit, although these figures are probably slightly skewed, the commercial figures or the revenue figures are skewed by the fact that United aren't playing regular Champions League football at the moment. That will skew those figures without a doubt, as we know. However, I didn't think, even though it's 17 years on now, I didn't think we'd be sitting here even having this conversation, suggesting that certainly in terms of pounds and pence, we can talk about legacy as well, but in terms of pounds and pence, City have caught United up and are going past them. I didn't think that would happen.
What do you reckon, Mark? You've got a view of this as well from the Middle East, but Abu Dhabi set their sights on doing something and it looks like they've done it. Can the same be said of what's going to happen with Newcastle? Because we have kind of dismissed it a little bit in the Northeast, but do you think they could do the same as City have done?
It's practically impossible now that the rules have changed so much since the Abu Dhabis took control of Manchester City. They were allowed to basically do whatever they want. They were allowed to spend as much as they wanted. And I think now that the financial fair play is in, that was voted by the clubs to protect themselves, it makes it difficult now for clubs who have got money to try and progress unless they buy and sell, which is what Newcastle are doing. Going back to this Puma, this contract now, everybody's, surprised about the amount, but it's only the way forward. Football around the world now is such a big industry. And you look at Puma now are wanting to be in the Premier League, and they've been out for a while. They've took the ball deal from Nike. So now the Puma will be the ball used in the Premier League, which is a huge thing. The Puma on the back of that will provide the referees kits. So now Puma are starting to move in the direction of the Premier League. So, given Manchester City, this type of contract is going to be the norm going forward. So, Puma want to be there. And, you talk about 100 million, huge sums of money, and certainly helps Manchester City become bigger and bigger in the clubs. But my argument is we've got to be careful is these gaps are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they've got to be careful because one thing that we love about the Premier League is its competitive edge. And if we lose that competitive edge, we become like other leagues around the world.
Ian, there's a big question that I think comes from this, and that is about due diligence, right? So would Puma spend 100 million over 10 years if those charges were going to stick? Because you think question number one in those, before the contracts are signed, would be, is there a get-out clause? Should you be found guilty of these 115 charges?
It's a very good question. You would think that there probably would be a clause. However, you would also think, and I think we all think now, Ian Herbert, my colleague, has written very eloquently across Mail Sports platforms today about this issue. There is a growing feeling, if you look at how much money City have spent on players in January, when they realised they were up against it to qualify for the Champions League, and again in this summer, and I think there'll be some more spend coming as well. When you look at how much was spent, when you look at the persuading a company like Puma to commit this astonishing amount of money over 10 years, you have to think that there is a growing confidence, if not some kind of knowledge, inside Manchester City that the majority of those charges are not going to stick, or they're at least not going to stick in a way that enables them to be punished in that kind of cataclysmic, worst case scenario way of relegation from the Premier League.
Do you know, it does link on to the next subject in a little bit of a tenuous way, but stick with me, because the Isak signing does it come down to money, right? This is the big conversation. So just to remind anybody, if they're not familiar, it's kind of been the ongoing transfer saga of the summer, hasn't it? Alexander Isak potentially to Liverpool from Newcastle. As a reminder, star player, 62 goals, 109 appearances for Newcastle. And it's not just Liverpool interested, is it? Arsenal have been linked, Barcelona have been linked. But who has got the finances to facilitate the move? And it looks like, Arne Slot's mob have blinked first, haven't they? Because they have now officially registered their interest in Isak. And the value, right, 120 million quid. So, I mean, Mark, you're a Geordie, right? This is your club. There's so much at play here, isn't there? Because what does it say about Newcastle if Isak goes from the northeast to Liverpool?
Yeah, if he does go, then it shows the message that Newcastle aren't going to be the force that Saudi Arabia owners want it to be, because they want to rival the Qataris. Saudi Arabia have always wanted a football club in the Premier League, and if they can't move forward and buy the best players and spend as much money as they can, it becomes really, really difficult. It's interesting, the last transfer windows Newcastle have had since signing Isak has been really painful as a football fan, that they've never been really able to get these players in. World quality players that can enhance the squad. We're relying on people like Callum Wilson as a backup striker. That sends the message that, as a club, we're just surviving. And I feel if we're going to sell Isak, I don't think it'll be in this window, but if we do sell Isak in the future, it's to reinvest in the squad in a quicker way to try and get us moving forward as a club. Because if you look at, for example, Coutinho, when he left Liverpool, everybody went crazy that they were selling Coutinho to Barcelona for over £100 million, which was, I think, was it 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Maybe even longer.
More than that.
And that was a huge sum of money. But what Liverpool did was they strengthened with Alisson, Van Dijk, Fabinho, and became a more formidable club and a more successful club by selling their star player. And is it a thought that Newcastle need to do the same, because they're well short of having a strong squad that's going to be capable of competing against your Liverpools, your Cities, in domestically as well as international in Champions League.
Well, it sounds to me like Mark's already accepted that Isak's going when you listen to him there. But also, is it a sign that financial fair play is working? Because everyone, I think, has just been expecting Newcastle to go and sign everybody. It just hasn't happened, has it?
Well, it's a sign that financial fair play and the Premier League's PSR rules are having an effect. Mm-hmm. Whether they're working, whether it's right that upwardly mobile clubs like Newcastle, Aston Villa would be another one. If whether it's right that that there is a ceiling put on their ambition by these rules. Interesting update here from Craig Hope, our chief football reporter and our Northeast expert. Craig says on social media, Isak's situation at Newcastle is complicated. His motivations could determine what happens next amid Liverpool interest. He was disappointed that what he thought was the promise of a new contract from previous co-owners was not honoured once they left. Paul Mitchell, the sporting director who's now left, took the view Isak was already well paid and had 4 years to run. Talks ended. There has been no progress since. So Craig obviously there is pointing quite clearly at a level of unhappiness around Isak and around Isak's people, and that line there, his motivations could determine what happens next. In other words, if he starts to agitate and if he starts to bump and grind up against what Newcastle want, then that could make it very difficult for Newcastle, because you could argue there's absolutely no point keeping an unhappy footballer.
What does it say about tapping up?
What it says about tapping up is that it happens all the time. Okay, it's happened through history. All the big clubs do it in lots of different ways, and I would not be surprised at all if it's happened again here. I'd be astonished if Liverpool are willing to put in excess of £120 million on the table without having some idea about whether the player would fancy it. Now, that leads us into a debate about whether the Premier League's rules around illegal approaches to players are a little bit archaic, because everybody does it. Football, from what I can see, is the only industry really where you're not allowed to approach somebody about work. We do it in our industry and lots of other industries. Not sure why football has to be different. So is it going on? Yes. Should we mind? I'm not sure. Nottingham Forest mind. They've just reported Tottenham to the Premier League for an alleged illegal approach to Morgan Gibbs-White. So some clubs still get out of the box about it. I'm not sure I do.
Yeah, there's a really painful and difficult thing to point out as well, that Liverpool have to buy a new striker, don't they? Jota, clearly, they have to replace a player. So does that change the negotiation as well between Newcastle and Liverpool when it becomes a formal conversation? Because Newcastle know Liverpool need to sign a big player.
That's a really interesting point, because everybody presumes here that Liverpool as league champions are in the box seat or in the driving seat, and they've got Newcastle pinned against the ropes in terms of these negotiations. I think the point you make is a valid one, not just about Diogo Jota, but also Luis Diaz is wanted by Bayern Munich, and I think there's an interest from the player in that move. Darwin Núñez hasn't worked out, as we know. We think he'll be on his way at some point, maybe to somewhere like Napoli. So Liverpool need a forward, and when you need something, and when the selling club knows that you really need something, as you allude to there, Gordon, the price only goes one way.
What's interesting, Newcastle haven't got a release clause in his contract, which is probably one of the best things they've done, because if there was a release clause of 120 million, somebody could trigger that tomorrow.
Being impartial about it, 209 days he missed through injury since 2022. That's a lot of football missed, isn't it?
Yeah, but shows how good he is when we're still talking he's a world-class striker.
Exactly.
So that's incredible how many goals he scored when he
62 and
plays.
109, yeah.
I think his injury, that's the way he plays. So I'm not worried about his injury. I get what Ian's saying about, next season it could be. I just think as a club, I think Newcastle need to find somebody who's going to replace him. And is TK the player that is going to be the player that's going to replace him? I think they're going to try and play both players together if they can get it through in this window. Play both players together, and it could be a January sale, or it could be next season where Isak leaves and we can move forward again as a club.
I followed this really closely in a couple of things. Hugo we've mentioned it, Ekitike. Do you think that the language around that signing is interesting? Does that tell us anything? It's like, we're going to go and sign your number one target unless you give us him. What's going on there?
Yeah, but then I would imagine if they did that, Newcastle would probably be reasonably sanguine about that, because they get to keep their best player, and that goes away. So if that is some kind of backdoor kind of intimidatory tactic by Liverpool, I'm not sure it's one that is really going to work. I mean, there's a huge gap between these two players, between Ekitike and Isak, in terms of pedigree, in terms of experience, in terms of goals. Ekitike hasn't played for France yet. He's very much a player in the making, whereas Isak is pretty much the finished Premier League article. So I think Liverpool, if Liverpool go full on for this transfer and put the money down, I think they'll get a deal done. I'm not sure that Newcastle will find themselves in a position to turn it down.
Right, we're joined now by Joe Beya, presenter, creator, the force behind Cheeky Sport, and a co-host of Vibe with Five alongside Rio Ferdinand. Joe is like a young Rupert Murdoch. He's got a media empire. He's minted. Joe, how is it running a media empire? You're 11 years into it now. How long before you just start disappearing on your private jet for the weekend to a private island with a questionable other media mogul?
You guys are very funny, first of all. Thank you for having me. What an intro. To be fair, things are going really well. You call it a media empire. I run a brand company where I consult for companies across the board, not just in football. It could be pharmaceuticals, it could be clothing, fashion lines. And to be fair, it's absolutely fantastic. And I guess the presenting gets me through the door, which I generally love. But what I do on a day-to-day, that is absolutely massive for me. So I do love it.
Joe, there's an interesting thing that somebody said to me a few years ago when the World Cup was in Rio, right? You had this big glass box in this super fancy studio, the glossy floor, famous pundits, but actually on the beach, you had lads filming content with folk with the sand in their toes, kicking a ball around, and that's actually the real football audience. Do you feel like that new media audience in the podcast world and the stuff you've done and are doing now, that's where the real audience is with football?
I think there's different mediums, but I think there is definitely an authenticity when you see your favorite footballer, kicking a football in the sand, or, looking at Wayne Rooney and he's just chilling, and, whatever that might be. Like, for me, that to me that's how I started. I mean, to quickly take you down memory lane, just in case you don't know, which you probably don't, most of you listening, but we started outside football stadiums. And not only were we talking to fans, I'm talking like 2014, 2015, outside talking to fans. I wasn't designated to one club. We just wanted to find the best attributes of your favorite player. So I vividly remember asking Harry Kane, or actually my mate David Alorca, actually, who's big in boxing now as a presenter. He all asked him, Harry, what are you having for dinner tonight? And to our surprise, Harry, while signing pictures and taking autographs, was, I'm having chicken tonight and it's going to be nice. And that would go viral and make the papers way more than, we didn't do well today and there's an iron team and etc. And then, we were running around very, very cheeky, hence the name CheekySport, getting players to sign contracts that they knew nothing about, thinking it's autographs. But we took that cheeky style and we developed it because we had great relationships with brands. So then when they would sit us down in meetings, I was in pharmaceuticals at the time. David Alorca, he was a pilot in training. Akeem was selling products in whether it be Asda's or whatever it is, but they were white label products for basically his invention. And they would sit us down and they go, "Oh, you lot are crazy, but you're not stupid crazy. You're like, structured crazy." And then from then on, we started consulting and presenting, and then years down the line, I met Rio, and who was aware of our stuff. And I said, listen, I can help you, rebrand your Five platform. And people would see me in front of the camera, but I would work very closely with his commercial guys and his agents to help rebuild the platform that was around before COVID. And we've done that successfully, and he's doing really well with what he's doing. I'm doing really well with what I'm doing, and I'm still on the show, and we're looking forward to having a good season.
It's really interesting what you said there, mate, about asking Harry Kane what he had for his dinner, for example. We find now in our side of the media that when I go and do what I might describe as a traditional football interview with a footballer, so you go and you do the normal stuff that you do for a piece that goes on Mail Online, or might even go in the dear old newspaper for those people who still buy it, and they'll do that interview. But these days at the end, you usually then whip your mobile phone out and say, right, whoever it is, right, Danny Welbeck, just do us like a couple of little social videos, and their eyes light up. Their eyes light up because that's the stuff that they watch on their phones, and that's the stuff that they really enjoy doing now. So they'll sit through kind of a boring half-hour chat with me about their career, but then when it comes to the social videos, that's the stuff that kind of gets them going.
But Joel, you say that you're a big Arsenal fan. What do you think about the transfer business that they've done so far?
I think if it had been done in a particular sequence, I don't think the fans would be as upset at the moment. I think the biggest disappointment as it stands is because we're still waiting for the Gyökeres announcement. We were teased with Eberechi Eze, who everybody loves. And don't get me wrong, I think the Zubimendi deal has been happening for like 18 months. So if you look at Liverpool, for example, everything just seems to go back. It's all in order. There's no time wasting. Whereas I am confident that we're going to get these signings done, but I think the fans just want that reassurance and they want everything to be done properly because, look, you're practically into pre-season now, and it's just like, where is the order? You want that confidence that we're going to challenge for the title, but it's going to be done in a particular way. And I think that's where the noise is really, coming from. I mean, for example, Madueke, okay player. Would he have been my first choice? Probably not, if I'm honest. Like, we have to be honest. But at the same time, if it's probably the amount as well, is that you're paying 50 mil for him, and I don't think they're too happy about it. But I do not stand for fans making petitions and, you know, like really being horrible, because we're in a country where we say we care about mental health. That could really destroy someone. It's not his fault that he's being bought back for 50 million. And plus, once he puts that shirt on, as fans, we have to support him until there's a absolute clear-cut reason to not support him. But now we are the dominant team in the league at the very least, right? You do not want to potentially be funding your rivals, because Chelsea's squad is serious. As much as we can banter around and stuff like that, what great potential that squad has, especially with Cole Palmer there, who I've been openly admitting it in the last few weeks. He is my favourite player in the Premier League. Don't care what anyone says. Right now, he's my guy. Don't care. Wow. And I think to myself, with him in that team, right, anything is possible. And you're just fine. All they got to do is receive the 50 mil from Madueke, maybe sell one or two players, and they're fantastic at selling. Then they go and they get Rodrygo, and we're all in trouble. So we kind of need to like see them more as rivals, like instead of just, you know, like kind of like funding them. It was all right a few years ago, but right now we have to be very careful.
And they're world champions now as well.
Yeah.
That performance alone. I said to one of my friends who runs a platform called 360 TV, you should check it out, cheeky plug. We were saying on Sunday morning, we were like, it's a very dangerous win if they get this, because it gives them the confidence. You know, look at PSG. They win the Champions League. All of a sudden, they look like world beaters. Even on their way to winning the Champions League, they look like world beaters, and it really turns the tide. And I'm a bit worried about Chelsea now, where I do believe that they could finish above Arsenal this season.
Interesting.
So if you could have two names then in this transfer window that would save Arteta's job in the next year, who would you take?
Rodrygo is one of them. The second one's a bit tough, because I have to say, I do think we've already got Gyökeres. I'll say Rodrygo, and I can't say Kikwanyeri, because I've seen this morning from Fabrizio that it looks like he's signing a new contract. I'm trying to think. I think Rodrygo saves him the job.
And do you know? Are you comfortable with the fact that all the fuss and all the talk about Isak at Newcastle is now in connection with Liverpool, where at one point it was about, I mean, obviously Mark here, big Newcastle fan, desperate for him not to go, but a lot of that chat a year ago was about Arsenal.
Are you surprised? Because if you see how well Liverpool have done their work and their transfers, how can anyone be surprised? You know, if I'm looking at the project from the outside, it looks very organized. I'm a man that likes structure and organizing my business, right? It looks very organized. They've got their targets. I'm practically just the last missing piece of the jigsaw. Why would I not go?
Yeah, no, fair. But that would, if I was you, I'd find that frustrating. I'd find that 100%. Frustrating. Yeah,
100%, because we've been rebuilding for so long. Are we still rebuilding? Where are we?
Well, I suppose you're building until you win something, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're building until you win something. I guess that's the narrative of it.
But it sounds wrong.
Yeah.
We've been building for a long time now.
That sounds like a man who thinks Arteta's time's up.
Well, he's still your guy. Arteta's still your guy, surely.
Oh, Mark?
Yeah, I always find Arsenal, but just that Nelly team, isn't it? It's like that one piece of the jigsaw. And 2 years ago, I thought it was Isak. You know, it was one forward player that you needed, like a Thierry Henry type of player that would open up defenses, but also score goals. Arsenal are great at opening teams up, but they haven't got that finished product.
Sign a striker.
That's what it is. One striker. But
Arteta's still your guy, Joe, surely.
I'll tell you one, before we go to this, Arteta is still my guy. But it's I've been in the media game for a lot of while. But if I'm honest, I was speaking with one of my friends the other day, and we were saying, when you get a striker that we need a 20 plus goal a season striker, right? But really and truly, if you look at football nowadays, if you can get someone on the left that can replicate what Saka does on the right, it then means that up top there's less pressure. You can stick with a Kai Havertz, or you can get a lesser striker, should we say? Because really and truly, where we're missing is, yes, it's up front, but you're probably missing 15 goals. let's be honest, like 15 goals. And unfortunately, Martinelli's not giving you those goals. And whoever is underneath Martinelli, like Trossard, yeah, he's clutch, but that's more clutch, really and truly. You can still have him, but you need someone that is giving you the same output that Saka is giving you. If you have that, then up front, it's less of a problem. So that's why I look at the Rodrygo signing as it could have been an astute signing if we had done it, but it looks like it's not going to happen.
Joe, one answer, right? One word. What position do Arsenal finish in next season?
Do you want the social media response, Joel, or do you want?
I want Joel.
Yeah.
As it stands with the transfers, second.
There we go, man.
Unless if we speak in a week's time and we've got Eze, and like. I'll come on for just 5 minutes. And I say, guys, I've changed my mind. You know what it is.
Let's do that.
Gordon, you're in charge of this show. Am I allowed to go back at him one more time on the Arteta question? Arteta's still your guy though, Joel, surely.
Right now, he's my guy until he gives me a reason to not be your guy.
And I think that's right.
Good answer. Joe Beya.
He's a good manager.
Great manager. Brilliant manager. Yeah. Joe Beya, thank you so much for your time. By the way, 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. The empire is growing. The private jet is on the way. We really appreciate your time. Thank you, Joe Beya.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you for your time, guys.
Sure. Thank you.
Superb. Last week I got a lovely response to wearing an Austin FC MLS top, and
what a shirt!
I feel like I haven't drawn any attention to the fact that a 55-year-old man is sitting wearing a rugby union top.
Rugby league top. Thank you very much.
Rugby league top. Why are you wearing a maroon top? Is it to noise me up as a Hibs fan?
Cherry and white.
Cherry and white.
No, it should be because I love that top you wore last week. Yeah. Your Austin top. It was terrific. For anyone who didn't watch last week on YouTube, go and have a look or look at our social clips because Gordon looks resplendent in it. And I thought, well, I've already got one. I don't own any football shirts that I would wear at my age, but I do have my Wigan Warriors top. So I just thought I would wear it today. But there was a story about this shirt. I certainly haven't bought a football shirt or any kind of shirt for many, many, many years. Got the shirt for free. So, as people will know who've listened to this podcast before, I'm a bit of a rugby league geek. I used to be a Wigan Warriors season ticket holder.
Yeah.
I'm not anymore. I don't have time to go as often as I was like. But I was during COVID. And obviously rugby league suffered the same fate as all sports during COVID. They stopped playing for a while and then they played behind closed doors. But of course, rugby league has nothing like the money washing through it that football does. So clubs really struggled. So Wigan reached out to their season ticket holders. There's probably only about 9,000 of us. Reached out to us and said, look, are you prepared to continue to pay for your season ticket, even though you won't be able to come to any games this season? Because frankly, we could do with the money. Now, it's worth pointing out here that rugby league season tickets are not the same. It's not the same cost as football. I think my ticket used to be about £250 a year or something. So it's not astronomical sums. So I thought, okay, I can afford that. That's okay. I'll do that. And that's what we did. A lot of us did it. Thought nothing of it until the season ended and things started to return to normal. Two things happened. One day I was in the park with my daughter and my phone rang. A number I didn't recognise. I answered it. It was one of the Wigan Warriors players just calling, saying thank you for your support. And for me, right, it was a lad called Oliver Gildart, doesn't play for us anymore. For me, as a guy who spends his life dealing with professional athletes, speaking to very, very famous footballers, for that 5-minute phone call, I was like a kid. I was like, oh my God. It's like, oh my God, it's Oliver Gildart on the phone. Oh my God. It's like, you know what I mean? I was like, so that was the first thing they did. Brilliant. Everyone who did it got a phone call, and everyone also got one of these shirts. And on the back, I won't turn around, on the back of this shirt, I showed Gordon before the start of the show, is the name of every single supporter who backed the club through COVID. So my name, even though you got to spend 10 minutes trying to find it, is on the back of this shirt with the other many, many thousands of people who continue to support the club. Brilliant. So that's why I don't occasionally wear this shirt if I go and have a kick around with Ether in the park on a Saturday. That's the only time it ever comes out.
It's brilliant.
Well, that's the story behind the shirt.
Well, you know, on the subject, Mark, of the ego and narcissism of having your own name on a strip, why don't we talk about exactly Infantino? It's time to turn our attention to him because if you look in the back of his strip, you might find Ladyman written, but if you look in a packet of Panini stickers, there's a chance you might find what we now know as the emblem, the nickname given to himself by Gianni Infantino.
Are we continuing this? Are we not finishing this now?
So,
the World Cup is over.
Well, now the Club World Cup is over. This is the last chance.
So this is it, guys. If he's not in here.
We could have a Donald Trump picture in there as well.
Picture of him and Cole Palmer.
Presentation.
Reece James just looking at him saying, are you really staying here on this show? Yeah, I'm staying.
I was just saying, maybe looks at John Terry, isn't it, Mark?
The stickers are out, guys.
Champions League.
The stickers are out. The tiny stickers are out. John Victor.
Familiar?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
What? You've heard of him? I haven't heard of him.
No, I didn't. I just
Gregor Kobel. Paulinho. Heard of him.
Yeah.
Alexander Mitrovic, definitely heard of him. This is a good pack. At least you've got a good pack. Yeah. Taking these home. Angel Correa, and that is it. There is no Gianni Infantino in this section.
So absolutely fruitless waste of time.
Yes, thanks, Henry.
Trying to find Infantino. But just every time you do that, I imagine a 9-year-old child opening them going, what?
I know, well, I'm just a bit underwhelmed by my Panini stickers in the 80s were
substantial,
really big, and kind of, you felt that you really had your hands on something. Not anymore, guys. These are like postage stamps.
That's because your hands were smaller and because the glue was probably stronger. Yeah. And the enjoyment of smelling that as it came out of the packet probably did something. Just a little reminder, please get in touch with us. Email us, whistleblowers@dailymail.com. Send your questions, your comments, whatever you fancy on there.
Tell us your football strip stories.
Yes.
You must have some football strip stories.
That's a good idea, isn't it? Give us a football strip story.
What's your favourite football clip?
I've got one on today, which is linked to Hibs, set up by a brilliant guy called Neil Renton, a pan and arrow Easter Road strip, and this generated over £1,000 to support a thing called Changing Rooms in Edinburgh. So you can go in and have a chat if you've got a bit of the black dog, and you can go to your local football club, go into the actual changing rooms and have a conversation about what's getting you down, and then walk around the pitch, walk up and down the stands and try and clear the head if you're having a rough time. So this is mine, Easter Road, Pan and Arrow.
Who would that be with?
It's with the charity with Hibs, right. And it's the community foundation as well. So fair play to the boys doing that. A great idea for every club. So every week I'm going to try and wear a significant top relevant
Clattenburg,
football.
You got any apart from your gladiator shirt? Have you got any football kits?
No, Newcastle, of course.
Have you got Newcastle?
I used to have a one with Blythe Spartans from the northeast.
Lovely,
Blythe Spartans.
Lovely. Well, quite a prominent non-league club in the time.
Dan Burns' team, isn't it?
Yes.
I remember going as a child, and we played in the FA Trophy against Nuneaton, and we must have played them about 6 times because there was no penalty shootout. And it kept going to replays. And I'm thinking, is anybody ever going to win this game? Yeah. Incredible.
Name of Blythe Spartans ground?
Croft Park.
Sorry?
Croft Park.
Croft Park. Very good. Like
knowledge. In the middle of Blythe. I used to be from Blythe.
Can you still get into your referees' tops? Have you kept any of your referees' tops from kind of your finals and things?
Yeah, I've kept them all, yeah.
Have you?
Probably. Yeah. I can still get into them.
You get into them for role play.
Yeah, just for the ladies.
I was going to ask you that, and then decided not.
A dark corner of the internet. That one. Yeah, wear one for us, Mark. Would you just to keep us going? Right, Mark. Something you wanted to talk about was respect towards referees in the women's Euros. Right. So paint the picture for us. I believe there's a little bit of a difference when it comes to respect, and it's something that's close to your heart from receiving dog's abuse for most of your career.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough. I'm working on the women's Euros, and I've really enjoyed it. What I like about it most is when there's a decision being made by the referee, none of the players question it. Even when there's a VAR decision, you see it in the men's game. There's a VAR decision, and the tensions just go crazy. The players go crazy. Everybody's angry. It never happens. All of them accept the decision. They're not crowding the referee at the review area. They're not. All they're doing is just getting on with the game. And I think it's refreshing to see that the referees aren't being hounded. They're not being, questioned. And I think, we can all learn from it that respect is a huge thing as well. And I think UEFA are, pushing this a lot where, they're asking for just captains speaking to the referee. And I think referees are enjoying it more. They're making better decisions because they're not being put under huge pressure by players. And I think one of the, the biggest thing I've learned is I think that maybe 1 or 2 yellow cards in the women's tournament so far for dissent, where we had 19 yellow cards for dissent in the men's last Euro, which is huge sum of yellow cards for dissent only. And referees do take a lot, But I think there's time where we can all learn that, referees need respect. We need referees in the game. And one of the ways that we can do it is by supporting them, certainly on the field.
Why is that then? What's it down to? Why do you think the bookings are where they are for dissent in the women's game? Well, by the way, they have gone up.
Yeah. What from? From the women's?
From the last time, yeah. The more bookings for dissent than there were before.
Because they've been given certainly a clamp down at the start of the tournament. They wanted to be stronger on it. What I'm saying is they're not surrounding the referees. Yeah. There might be a part of conversation, and it's how the caution's reported as well. But what I like about it is that, certainly when there's a decision made, they're just accepting. And I think it's coming where the clubs, the countries are pushing their players to respect referees more. And I think we certainly can learn from what they're trying to do at the highest level within the women's game. And you see it even when I watch the women's game in England in the WSL, that, referees seem to get more respect than they certainly do within the males game. And I think we can certainly, learn from the education side of it that, putting referees under pressure certainly doesn't change a decision. And I used to have it years ago. I remember, Rio Ferdinand giving me absolute dog's abuse refereeing Manchester United. And I knew where it was coming from, because it was coming from the coach who was getting the players to try and get into the referee to get the next decision. It wasn't that decision because I knew the referee wasn't going to change the decision. It was about putting pressure on the next decision to see if they could get that decision. And that comes, what happens at the top level. They're trying to put pressure on referees to get the next decisions because they feel that that's important.
So keeping that in mind, in the middle of a game, in the heat of a game, if a team or a player is particularly getting into you and getting on your nerves, surely human nature would then edge you towards being less generous towards them in terms of decisions later in the game? It's human nature, surely.
Of course it is. And I think if a player's giving you dissent, you don't give them second chances. That's just the way life was. You get players who are nice to you, they'll probably get one more, because you can have tackles where you can have 3 or 4 tackles and then eventually get cautioned for persisting. Probably a person who was giving you dog's abuse might not get them chances, of course. But I remember years ago in players' contracts, if they got cautioned for dissent, they would be fined. And I've had players come to me and say, Mark, please don't tell the boss that you've cautioned us for dissent. Say it was for a tackle or something else, because they knew.
Which players? Tell us.
I don't really want to go into that. But players would come to you and say, look, I don't want to be cautioned for dissent because I know that I'm going to be fined by my club. This was years and years ago. Now, that's
so what are you going to pretend that you'd booked him for then?
Yeah, because they didn't want to be fined and they didn't want their salary deducted. Yeah. But now players haven't got that in their contract. They don't care. 5 yellow cards, certainly for a player who's playing up.
And that works, by the way, in the amateur game as well, doesn't it? You still get a fine, like a club fine. So it makes a difference at every level of the game.
Let me ask you a question, Mark. So this season coming in the Premier League, only there's a new rule, as we know. Only the team captain will be allowed to approach the referee to discuss decisions. According to UEFA.com, this new rule aims to improve communication and reduce dissent towards match officials. Any hope in hell of that being adhered to?
What a load of rubbish. This happened 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
I thought so too.
The captain was allowed to speak to the referee.
I thought so.
But what was difficult, when you had these type of captains, when I was lucky enough, like people like John Terry, Wayne Rooney, and these type of and Steven Gerrard, they were volatile, difficult players in the heat of the moment. They were, playing on the edge. And if you speak to them at the wrong time, for example, and they were captain, you'd lose it. Because they're not interested, speaking only to captains, unless you've got a captain who's going to say to his team, guys, stop it. But how do you very rarely see that? No. So what is the point?
So do you think there's no chance? But referees, as always, will begin the season under pressure to implement this new rule. Do you not think there's any chance of it sticking?
I think this is a personal view. I think we've got yellow cards in the game. If that's the rule now, your yellow card, if players clearly show dissent, then give them a yellow card. Hopefully that might change the trend. But yeah, you're right. Clubs will complain because they're losing players. They're on small squads. The squads are getting reduced. But people will say, well, that's their problem. Why not come into something where they're given another card maybe a different colour card for dissent, which means they're fined. They're fined, like for example, at cricket.
But fines mean nothing to footballers, Mark.
But you've got to make the punishments higher and higher and higher. So eventually, for example, a cricketer who showed dissent to another player in the England-India match was fined 15% of his match fee. If you then, the first offence is that, then it goes up and it goes up and it goes up in a scale, then players will stop doing it because players play for money. They play.
No, they don't.
There's a love, but they play for the money. And I think players would learn quickly if they're fined. If they're not getting fined, then they're going to keep doing it.
The only thing that hurts a modern footballer is time off the field. Is time away from the field. Money at this level. Money doesn't hurt them. Time away from
you'd lose your place in the team with that level of
time away from the field really hurts them. So it's interesting that idea of a different colour card for dissent. Really, really interesting.
That is interesting.
So if you had an orange card for dissent, and if you took an orange card, it meant you immediately served a 1-game ban. That would start to trouble. Start to trouble players.
But what I'm looking at as well, Ian, you're right about the playing time as well. But money also. If a player starts getting fined, that for me that should go down into the grassroots to the levels.
That's
below.
exactly what I was going to say, Mark. Because I think look further down the pyramid. Even semi-professional football and amateur football, grassroots football. I remember playing with boys, and you're like, that's going to cost the club again, isn't it? You've been booked again. And we used to have a player that we played with, Banker Boney, because he was minted, he could pay the fines, which basically meant that the discipline of the team was awful because you knew there was financial backing.
He was a rich bloke playing
there was a rich guy that was going to cover the cost. Because it adds up if you're playing twice a week at certain parts of the, and there's 4 or 5 bookings a game.
But so an orange card, you get to stay on the field. But you serve a 1-game ban for dissent.
These are
I think referees No, I think referees will be stronger in that, knowing because, if you get a player who's given a yellow card for a foul, for example, and then he shows dissent and he gets a second yellow, referees are like, does it really reach that threshold of a second yellow? Where do I go? Where if it's, for example, if it's an orange card, any colour card, you know that he could serve a 1 match. For example, like coaches, they're allowed to have so many yellow cards and then they serve a 1 match suspension in the state. That's a good idea. If a player's cautioned twice for dissent, he serves a 1 match ban. That could be one step forward. One
thing that really stands out for me in that debate, though, is when you get a match like the Battle of the Bridge, where it just goes bananas and everyone's at it and scheming, and suddenly 9 orange cards are handing out. Have there been moments in games where you feel like, actually, this is becoming a public order moment, we're losing control? Because that's the stuff that then...
The Battle of the Bridge.
Yeah. But Ian, it's right, isn't it, though? The practicalities then of dissent, suddenly you've banned the whole team.
Well, we're talking about dissent here towards a referee. Yeah, so at Battle of the Bridge, they're all effing and jeffing at each other, but not necessarily at Mark, who's in the middle of it trying to stop them beating 10 shades of shit out of each other. But we're talking about... what you're talking about at grassroots level when you were playing, dissent towards officials, which we all, I think, accept as a curse on the game, and current punishments haven't solved it. This new mandate won't solve it, as Mark says. So what solves it? Obviously, there's a cultural thing. There's a cultural thing that is embedded so deep in our game, all the way down to the level at which our kids play, unfortunately, all the way to the top, where it's considered okay to call a referee a name, and it's not okay, and it shouldn't be okay. But there's so much of that embedded in us that needs to be undone, that I think it takes a radical step to try and do it. And I think our resident referees has hit on a notion there, a different colour card for dissent. By the way, what was your dissent record like, Gordon, when you were playing in that team with Banker Boney, whatever his name was?
Well, Mark Chapman played in the team. Chappers played in the team, and Dave Jones from Sky. Played in the team beside me in Semifield.
Where was this?
So we played for a team called Ibis in the Southern Amateur League.
Right.
And there were quite a few detectives from the Met Police in the team as well, who I really had questionable records. But Dave Jones, put it this way, Dave Jones from Sky took me aside in the pub and said, I think your language is inappropriate when you play football. And I think I replied to Dave, well, Dave, you can... I said, sometimes the language I use is necessary to get the point across that perhaps you're not doing what is necessary for this team. So there's a little bit of an insight. Right. Incidentally, Chappers from Match of the Day, his disciplinary record was atrocious.
What, for language or for fouls?
Fouls and dissent.
Really?
Yeah, there you are.
What position did he play?
Centre half. He was a good player, but he didn't finish many of the games he started. If you
Really?
look at it.
Chappers of Hale.
Chappers of Hale.
Chappers of Hale.
I loved
Goodness
playing with
me.
him, but tell you what, he was a mardy, miserable bugger.
Well, we'll mark this in our little book and wait for him to get on his high horse on the first edition of Match of the Day next season when somebody's got sent off for a late tackle.
Notorious for it. Let us know what you think, by the way, because that is a big issue, isn't it? Do you believe in the orange card? Get in touch with us, whistleblowers at dailymail.com. Social accounts as well, X Blowers Pod, TikTok Whistleblowers Podcast, Instagram Whistleblowers Pod. And that leaves us one thing left to do on the podcast, Mark. Can you blow the full-time whistle, please? If you want to watch more episodes of Whistleblowers, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll keep you up to date all the way through the summer with everything that's happening in the world of football.